Greetings, system failure listeners. Nate here, Brian over there. Brian, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing all right, Nate. How are you?
Oh man, I am in a state of utter exhaustion. It has been a whirlwind week for yours truly. I had occasion to head down to New Jersey this past week with the lovely Tracy. You know, that's her native stomping grounds, the Jersey Shore, and so that's where I spent the week. But in an effort to save up my precious vacation days, I did not take off work, so I just had to work from, a collection of kitchen tables and coffee shop, highs, the kind of seat that's like the bar height seating, so your feet aren't really touching the ground. So yeah, I've been trying to, obviously we had to get, I had to get this week's Substack system failure essay, to lined up and launched, and also I do all this work for work. And so it was a hell of a week. I don't know what it is. Like, if I don't sit in my perfect Herman Miller embodied chair at my ergonomically correct lowered keyboard, if I have to sit in these crazy, coffee shops and kitchen table, if it's catch as catch can, my back is going to be in a hell of a state by the end. It's like I'll just have a slight asymmetry on one side or the other of my my neck there, and then also driving the car, it's 7 hours down to the Jersey Shore from Maine, and then people have the couches, and if when you have a bunch of people in coming over to visit or hang out, you end up sitting on the couch next to people, and if someone's seated to one side of you but not the other, the side that they're sitting on smushes down, and then the other side is at a normal height, so one hip is lower than the other, and so you just end up kind of leaning one way for a while, then leaning the other way for a while. What is it, man? Like dogs and cats just lie on the hard tile floor, and they extend one of their legs as a pillow under their chin, and they seem perfectly comfortable. Why is it that I have to have just a perfect ergonomic situation, and any departure from that causes, a week of misery and a swollen lump on one side or the other of your neck that you can constantly rub. So that's happened, but yeah.
Well, animals don't have cell phones.
Yeah.
And they move. I don't know. They're always moving around and stuff. But they don't take 6-hour car rides down to New Jersey either.
Yes, true. I'm existing in an evolutionarily novel situation where we didn't evolve under these circumstances, and to add even more pain and suffering to the equation, being bipedal is a relatively recent evolutionary development versus being a quadruped. And I just feel like being a quadruped is more established.
Do they not give you vacation days at your job? You're always working at the David Gilmour concert and whatnot.
Yeah, they do give me vacation days. I think I even have maxed them out to where they'll not. I think only 2 weeks rolls over every year, and I think it's just been maxed out for years. But when you work remotely, I have to send out emails. I have to get approvals from both because I work as under contract, so I have an employer, and that employer contracts me out to other employers, and so I would have to coordinate it with both of those people. It's just easier just to not do any of that and just stay at work.
Well, your wretched back aside, how is the Garden State otherwise?
Oh, it's great, man. New Jersey is a fun place to be. It really is good to get out of Portland, Maine, and blow the stink off every once in a while. One thing about New Jersey is there's beautiful women everywhere. In Portland, Maine is just. You're a single guy. I just feel bad for you here in Portland, Maine. I mean, the trout pond ain't exactly stocked here in Portland. I'm sure the ladies would agree about our side too. I mean, I'm sure the ladies of Portland, Maine would agree that there's pressure. It's the slim pickings in the dating pool. But just walking around the streets of a place like Point Pleasant, New Jersey. You're like, oh, yeah, okay, we live in a very odd place up here in Maine. It's a good reminder that most places are not like this place. So that was fun. I drank alcohol on this trip, which was it was fun for an hour or two. But, man, the suffering sure set in. I'm talking a lot about suffering. Had a great trip to New Jersey. Just want to emphasize that. But we went out to Asbury Park, which is it has all this cool old Art Deco pavilions and things from the 20s and 30s. So it was fun to go there for Labor Day weekend. Met some friends there. I had one rum drink. And then over the course of the entire evening, I think I had maybe 5 total drinks. One rum and Coke, and then some Coronas thereafter. And it was over the course of 6 or 7 hours. So maybe I spread 5 drinks over the course of 6 hours. That's not really enough that's just enough to let the hangover start when you're still still out and about. But by the time I got home, I just felt poisoned. I didn't know, there was no buzz or anything. I just felt poisoned and just and you get that headache from being hideously dehydrated. And it's like no matter how much water you drink, having Coronas is just a good way to dehydrate yourself. So I guess it was, and then the next day I just had that dull, tinny sort of headache behind your eyes that just lets you know that you've poisoned the hell out yourself. And you must do better in the future. Had a good time, though. It was fun to catch up with everyone and find out what the latest goings on is in all of their lives. And it was nice to. I mean, the Jersey Shore on Labor Day weekend. It's a very festive time and place to be. So that was enjoyable. But unfortunately, I ingested poisons, and the next day suffered quite poignantly from the dosage. Yeah. So that's
we need that Soma from Brave New World.
Yeah,
which is a drug that doesn't do that.
Yeah, it would be nice to. It's like every moment of enjoyment you have with that alcohol, you have to pay for with a moment of misery the next day.
Well, you are like poisoning yourself to kind of create a sense of group cohesiveness, eh?
I mean, it does. It especially if you're single or in the dating game, or you need to grease the wheels of social interaction. Alcohol's a great drug for that. But it's not so great when you're in your 40s and already have a lovely fiance like I do, and it's of very limited utility.
Agreed. Yeah, it's pretty rough, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that is a good drug for people who are like 20. Not such a great drug for people who are like 40. I think that's I never remembered when I was much younger. I never remembered it feeling so bad. Or maybe the reality is you can only have so many beers in your life before your liver just revolts. And maybe I passed that threshold or something like that. Ooh. But all in all, great trip to New Jersey. Even if the exhaustion is considerable. It's always nice to shake the snow globe and get out of your normal routine a little bit. But I feel great for having done that, even if I'm a little bit loopy in this podcast, maybe a little bit all over the road.
Are you a withered husk?
I certainly was the day after drinking, but no, I feel like tired but happy versus being tired and a withered husk. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oof. So how are things back here in Portland? Not much going on. It is a rainy Sunday when we're recording this podcast. I did the 7-hour drive back from the Jersey Shore yesterday. But then, of course, when I got home, I had to put the finishing touches on this week's Substack essay and had to gin up the notes for this podcast and, a couple. So it's been like, it just feels like no rest for the weary.
Summer's unfortunately over. Yeah. So there's like no more going to the beach. Although... I don't know. I think, the amount of asses being out at the beach is kind of messes with the experience.
Why does it mess with the experience? I would think it would augment the experience. How does it mess with it?
It's just a little much. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, because you end up wanting to stare at, chicks' butts, and I'm just trying to live my life, man.
So are you trying to insulate yourself from chicks' butts then? I don't understand. I would thought that would be like the main reason to go to the beach.
It's just a little aggressively sexual. I mean, I could like hang out in the nude and go around, dangling my junk in front of people's face too.
Well, that's not. But if women were doing that, then that would make the beach a huge, popular attraction. I would think. No one wants men doing that though.
Yeah.
If women were mincing around, if there were nymphets mincing around in the nude down at Willard Beach, I mean, surely we would be there every weekend.
Yeah. Well, no one does that though. That's not the case.
Not. And also, super rude to stare. You just have to be polite when you're at the beach, for sure.
I don't know, man. It's just a bit much. I think it was a better time before this happened. I don't know.
Before this happened, meaning the end of summer?
Before asses were everywhere at the beach.
I see.
It was a better place.
You mean, so you want to go back to the 1920s where you got the man who was, arresting women for having a bathing suit that's too revealing?
Yeah, I mean, I am like an old man shouting at a cloud here. But I was watching Vegas Vacation because it was on YouTube.
Yeah, what's the chick from Vegas Vacation? Christy Brinkley, right? Isn't she the one in that? Carry on. Sorry.
Probably. I might just think of it as like Chevy Chase, But anyway. They go to some, hotel pool party, on the roof somewhere, and there's all kinds of girls in bikinis, and I just had this epiphany that, if this were now, everyone's ass would be out. It's not like the feminine form isn't, appealing without it, I don't know, being so overtly sexual. I I don't know.
You sound like Mullah Omar here with your opinions on what women should wear at the beach. It's just like overtly sexual. I don't know. I guess maybe you get desensitized. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out the downside here. You're saying overtly sexual as if it's like this negative thing.
Well, I mean, you're not allowed to go and just stare at the girls behind.
Yeah, rude.
But that is like the whole point, though, is to like garner attention.
Well, that's what they're doing. Yeah, they're like flowers, right? And you're like a bumblebee, but you can't land on the flower at the beach. That's not a good place to go up to people and start, hey, lady. I mean, I guess you could, but a lot of those ladies are just there, not trying to mingle. Like a bar is a great place to do that. Beach, I don't know. I feel like, that'd be a questionable thing to invade people's towel space.
I don't know. I mean, I think this is maybe like a sign of like the social breakdown of our society. I don't know. That's an awfully old man yells at a cloud thing to say, but
I always liked old Samwise Harris, at Dr. Harris's point about like there's got to be some happy middle ground between stoning women who dare to go out in public without their burqa on, and having scantily clad women winking at you from the glossy cover of every magazine in the checkout aisle down at the supermarket. Right? There might be some happy medium between those where we could land on that's not like oppressive to women on the one side, but not distracting to all of society on the other, and amplifying that distraction and thrusting it in front of you every place you go. But I'm still surprised. I thought that the male imperative was to minimize the number of miles, inches, and feet between us and the asses, and then whatever you're trying to get closer to it versus farther away from it or avoid it. So I'm just interested to hear you talk about this as if it's a liability versus a major asset at the beach.
Okay, well, let me put it to you this way. I mean, you have a fiance,
yes,
and maybe you guys will have, a child someday, right?
Yes.
Who maybe will be a daughter, and she's going to have her ass out at the beach. So you can look forward to that. I'm going to bring up this conversation when it happens.
Well, I mean, I do feel like a bathing suit, the beach is just a good place to be scantily clad. I can't imagine being scandalized, even if I knew my own daughter had a small bathing suit. I don't know. There are some bathing suits that get shocking, but if it's just a regular bathing suit bottom, like a bikini bottom or a top, I can't really imagine. I can imagine there are contexts where you wouldn't want your daughter, you would want her to be modestly clothed, like job interviews and things like that. But the beach? I don't know.
Well, bikinis aren't, so it's not like, are pretty like normal, right? We're not that's like an ass out,
There's like the thong with the thong back. Right. Yeah, thong back bikinis are very popular.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, we're talking about square inches of fabric. The difference between a thong back bikini and a conventional bikini has got to be 3.5 square inches of fabric, right? Can it really make that big a difference?
Yes. All right. I don't know.
Well,
in any case, it's a moot point because there's no more going to the beach.
Well, I just will say that Asbury Park down on the Jersey Shore, a noted hotspot for the gays, and so I saw a lot more man ass and like in thong back bikinis than I did, females in thong back bikinis on this particular trip to the shore.
So many asses were observed.
All male ass were highly regrettable for yours too. Well, I like it was like the bar we went to was not like a gay bar per se. It just had kind of become that scene. But I really love going to a good gay bar. I just love the festive atmosphere. And so even though the asses are disappointingly male, still have a great time, chit-chatting, hanging out, ordering those coronitas. I don't know. I definitely saw the vast majority of the asses I saw over Labor Day weekend male, unfortunately. So I don't know. Maybe that's why what you're saying seems alien and foreign to me, Brian.
All right.
Well, the big news, and this was brought up by some of the people down in Jersey, the big news this week out of Portland, Maine, was the rally of Mr. Graham Platner next door at the Cumberland County Civic Center, or the Cross Insurance Arena, as it has been remonikered. But last week they had Bernie Sanders fly in. They had a big rally here for this Graham Platner. Brian, you've heard of him, the oyster shucker from the Mid-Coast who did a couple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and seems disgruntled about the unfortunate direction of both of our political parties and is looking to unseat the truly wretched Susan Collins, the warmongering ghoul in the next Senate race here in Maine.
Well, he was on breaking points.
He was definitely on breaking points. That was fun. And we learned that he used to tend bar at a bar that Ryan Grimm used to go to down there in D.C.
Right.
But this is like a working class man with four tats up on his forearm. He speaks gruffly. I kind of like that.
Well, he has no like prior. He's not like a career politician in any way.
Yeah, and he makes the Bernie Sanders kind of noises. Not the corporate mainstream Democrat supporting endless foreign wars and tax cuts for the wealthy, but in the bank bailouts, not that, but the Bernie Sanders version, Medicare for all, raise taxes on the sort of, that the all of the Democratic messaging that they abandoned since the Clintons pioneered the taking of campaign contributions and campaign finance from corporations instead of the labor unions who were in a state of collapse after Reagan's 1980s.
Of course. Well, Bernie Sanders always does end up bending the knee to the Democratic Party, and so we need someone who's not going to do that.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. And the big question I wanted to ask you about Mr. Platner is: do you think he's legit? Is he going to be someone that, like a politician that is trustworthy? Is it someone? I mean, I intend to vote for the man, but he's so new. It's hard to know. And Charlie Brown has had the football moved so many times that it's hard not to be a little bit paranoid or suspicious. But it's encouraging that Platner makes the right noises, at least, eh?
It seems like he's in a position to do the thing. Like, if you're running for president, I think it's a lot harder to be like a not lizard person. So, I mean, it seems promising. I mean, I'll vote for him. They heard about him down in New Jersey, eh?
Yes, they had heard about him down in New Jersey. He's like the biggest news last week, before all this Epstein came out this past week. The week before, he was like the biggest news. That's why he was on Breaking Points with our friends Crystal and Sagar.
Well, he's garnering like national donations, I guess, and splashing on the national scene. So that's exciting. But yeah, I mean, well, Susan Collins had some, shameful outings, or they keep yelling, shame at her whenever she goes to try to deliver a speech somewhere. So I saw the video.
Awesome. She turned up in Searsport or someplace like this for a dedication, and people were just not even going to listen to her. They're just going to boo her out and yell at her and not even let her talk, which I think is hilarious. I kind of always hated Susan Collins. She's Maine's very independent. We don't really. It's odd. You would think it would be like a blue state. And to a large extent, it very much is. But we've had this Republican senator forever, and she just will not go away. 4 years ago, was it? We had that Sarah Gideon who was running against Susan Collins, and on the eve of the election, Gideon was up like 5 points, but then Susan Collins ended up winning anyway. So we'll see. But I do think that I had been, because of the betrayal of Bernie Sanders and the socialist light Democrats. In the 2016 and 2020 elections. Because of that, I had been totally out on the Democratic Party. But this Graham Platner sounds like just the sort of person I would hope that the Democrats would pivot to and realize that their corporate centrist ways, don't please anyone. Right? It's endless wars, right? The neoconservative wars, and then the neoliberal bank bailouts and trickle-down economics. Right? Those are the things that mainstream Dems have been supporting since the Clinton years, and we just got to get away from. So I'm hopeful.
Well, like Bernie Sanders was not like a military guy, and so I think having a military guy is reassuring. I mean, he'll get that more of that like right wing vote and have like a stronger sort of looking image. So yeah, I mean, fingers crossed.
I hope so.
I gotta like not fall for the hope and change like. I mean, I fell for it under Obama, and I basically fell for it under Trump, and so no more falling for hope and change.
I feel the same way. That Lucy moving the football is a great analogy. It's time for another kick. Is your long snapper going to hold the ball for you and move it suddenly at the last second once again? But I know, but just provisionally, I suppose I am excited by the sorts of noises that Graham Platner is making up here in Maine.
I mean, well, it's not like he's going to be able to get elected and like release the Epstein list, right?
I guess not. And we'll get into that Epstein list because it's interesting to see that we've got our Marjorie Taylor Greens and our Nancy Maces and our Lauren Boeberts, the most hated Congress critters in all of Reddit. are now breaking with the Republican rank and file to demand a release of Epstein files out on Capitol Hill.
That is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Well, now on Reddit, it really twists up like what the shills are, what the robots are trying to do.
It really messes with their narrative. But I first wanted to address this matter of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I saw a tweet from Unusual Whales this week. Unusual Whales, they have a big Twitter account. They have a Reddit, a subreddit, but their Unusual Whales refers to the graphs of option flows. If you look at them, like one of these, like a humpback whale has baleen that it streams plankton through, and so the option flow graphs all look like that. They look like the mouth of a whale, a bunch of little skinny lines. And so this Twitter account has called themselves Unusual Whales, meaning, unusual graphs of option flows, At any rate, they had this tweet here, which about Ocasio-Cortez. AOC has submitted her latest annual financial disclosure. According to the filing, her only reported assets include under $66K across various bank accounts and less than $15K in a mutual fund. She also continues to carry up to $50,000 in student loan debt dating back to 2007. So it's like Ocasio-Cortez, right? It's nice to see that she's not getting rich, like Nancy Pelosi and her husband. But on the other hand, Tim Dillon was on JRE a couple days ago talking about how Ocasio-Cortez had taken money from Israeli tech entrepreneurs as part of her coming up as a bartender from Brooklyn, and she's like not made the right. She been slow to call what's going on in Gaza a genocide, and has faced some blowback from her supporters for not being sufficiently pro-Gaza, I guess. But I remember mostly her refusal to try to hold a vote to oust Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. Remember this? Went over the Medicare for All thing. Jimmy Dore was hammering on this for like months.
Right.
Screaming about how we'll either have Medicaid for all or a new speaker. And it does seem like Alexandria is a little more concerned about her political career than she is about the implementation of economic justice. This would be my concern for Mr. Graham Platner. It's like, man, right? Ocasio is an outsider, arrived in Congress. Nice to see she's not getting rich, but she's also so concerned about her career that she's not she's not splashing and making waves like I would like to see her. And so it's disillusioning, and it's another one of these Lucy in the football situations that makes me temper my expectations for Mr. Platner.
Well, ultimately, the political change that we want to have happen isn't really going to come from voting for politicians. It's just going to come through, I don't know, activism.
General strike or something like that.
Well, doing podcasts like these. Well, it needs to be like a cultural change. Yes. But yeah, so I guess your point is that AOC apparently has humble beginnings. It seems hard to imagine that her net worth is that low and that there must be some kind of rigmarole going on.
Yeah, she's not. She doesn't seem like she's corrupt in the Nancy Pelosi sense of the word, but it does seem like she's so concerned. She doesn't want to scuttle her political career making a principled stand either. And what we really need are principled stands where politicians allow to sacrifice their careers.
If her net worth is so low, it sounds like it's really negative. If she's got $50,000 in student loans, and
yeah, well, her net worth is barely positive according to the filing referenced by Unusual Whales. You're right.
Would she have to report if she owns a home or something? It's just hard to imagine. But anyway,
good question. I don't know if SEC filings require that.
You think if her net worth was so low, she'd be more willing to primary Nancy Pelosi? You think there'd be something going on there? But having Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Thomas Massey, releasing Epstein names is like a product of like the greater cultural movement in people sticking with the Epstein issue. So that's the kind of thing that causes social change, I would think. Yep.
Well, I'm thrilled you brought that up, Brian, because I wanted to read a much curtailed, a much shortened, a much edited version. I just pulled some excerpts from yesterday's Wall Street Journal piece on Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Epstein thing. So I thought I would just read that just to make sure that we are getting this exactly right. So according to the Wall Street Journal, right, the headline here is "Why Marjorie Taylor Greene Broke with Trump on Epstein," and the subheadline is "Georgia Congresswoman and Trump loyalist is urging president to meet with victims and backvote on document disclosure." As mentioned, this article appeared in the September 6th Saturday edition of the Wall Street Journal, and it was written by the unfortunately named Olivia Beavers and Meredith McGraw.
There's nothing wrong with having your last name be Beavers.
Nothing wrong with it, no, but I still feel like that's going to open you up to mockery at your elementary school playground.
All right.
Okay, so here we go. Very, very brief version of this, Reader's Digest version of this article. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is walking a political tightrope, splitting with the White House while trying not to cross President Trump or his legions of supporters. Greene, who built her reputation as an unwavering Trump loyalist, is now one of the most prominent Republicans defying the president and party leadership, teaming up with Democrats to try to force a House vote on releasing files related to Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender. The Georgia firebrand found herself hugging a California progressive, Representative Ro Khanna, at a press conference this past week, flanked by Epstein victims who called on Trump in Congress for more public disclosure. Quote, "The truth needs to come out and the government holds the truth," she said. Greene is part of a wing of the MAGA movement convinced that powerful people have worked for years to suppress information about the case surrounding Epstein, the disgraced financier who died in 2019. In an interview, she said she remained a fierce Trump supporter, even as White House officials have said her star has dimmed with the president. Officials have taken issue with some of Greene's recent positions, including her opposition to U.S. military strikes on Iran. She labeled Israel's action in the Gaza conflict. She labeled Israel's actions in the Gaza conflict a, quote, genocide, breaking with most of the GOP. This past week, administration officials lighted up the phones of Republican lawmakers to pressure them not to sign on to the Epstein petition, which is being led by Khanna and Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, a libertarian and prominent Trump foe. The White House warned Republicans that backing the bill had amounted to, quote, a very hostile act against the administration. The petition requires 218 signatures. All 212 Democrats back it, but just 4 Republicans signed it as of Friday. Massie, Greene, and Representatives Lauren Boebert of Colorado and Nancy Mace of South Carolina. They will need 2 more Republicans to move it forward. One wrinkle, this month, 2 special elections are expected to add 2 Democrats to the House. Quote, "We campaigned on transparency issues like release the Epstein files," Greene said. "And all of a sudden, there's this hard stance coming from the Republican leadership and many of the members of the administration, and I'm shocked by it. And I think it's a major misstep. It is an uncalculated error that is going to have ramifications directly in the midterms. The Epstein effort has led to one of the strangest political coalitions in today's Washington, with right-wing Greene lining up with left-wing Democrats to oppose the Republican president." Well, you mentioned Massie, and then the 3 most hated representatives on Reddit, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. But that is a fascinating development. I did have the occasion to watch a few minutes of the press conference where they wheeled out some Epstein victims on this past week down in Washington. Very interesting. I mean, on Reddit, it will say over and over again that people who voted for the Donald must be in some kind of a cult because they don't think for themselves. But I don't know, man. It seems like huge chunks of the Donald's supporters are not willing to just follow him down the Epstein rabbit hole and are in a state of open revolt. And it's incredible to see the careers of Boebert and Mace and Taylor Greene, following that trend or acknowledging that reality. So that's really, it's even more exciting than Graham Platner.
Yeah, well, the thing about Donald Trump is he garnered the support of the Bernie bros, and I'm sure that support has evaporated. And I'm sure that Donald Trump is cooked and that the midterms are going to prove it. Yeah. So I think it's a good move by Marjorie Taylor Greene there. It seems like I'm sure it's going to work out fine.
I would love a scenario where the Republicans get a walloping in the midterms, and I would love for the narrative to be because of the Epstein thing. I would just love it if that turns out to be non-negotiable between the Donald and his base of supporters. Wicked exciting.
It's just a question of like who gets voted in instead of the Republicans, and hopefully it's not Democrat, establishment shills.
Well, the poll numbers for the Democrats the Democrats out of power have not seen a bump in their poll numbers. Usually, the idea here is that we've got the left-right march of two corporate parties, and it doesn't whichever party you vote for, right? People are waking up to the fact that there is no way you can vote against endless wars or bank bailouts or trickle-down economics where you cut the taxes of the rich. Neither party you don't have a home if you want not those things.
Yeah, well, endless wars kind of were a sticking point, but it got drowned out by COVID and Putin and the Ukraine, and now people are back to supporting endless wars, I guess. But this whole Epstein issue, though, it incorporates the military-industrial complex, but has a crazy sexual depravity spin on it. That's just not this issue just not going to go away, and so it's it's the ultimate mind virus. This crazy Epstein issue. Yeah, it's the
ultimate mind virus, and simultaneously, all right, you've got this business going on in Gaza, and the notion that the victims of the last famous genocide, the Jews, who got hit with the Holocaust back in the 40s, right? Now, the Israeli state that came out of that, at least rhetorically, was supposed to be a response to that, is now itself committing a genocide, right? It's like the last people who are victims of abuse are now the abusers. It's like that same old legends of the werewolves and the vampires, if your strange uncle diddles you, then you are doomed to go and do diddling yourself later in life, right? It's like that dynamic seems to be taking place in Gaza, and that really is like a torpedo that's going to sink the entire battleship of the post-World War II mythos. We're supposed to be the country that liberates the concentration camps, right? We're opposed to bigotry, the country of civil. Of course, most of this isn't true, right? We also are a country that is built on genocide. We didn't count African Americans as regular citizens until the 1960s, so in living memory. I mean, it's really not, it's not that it's true, it's just that we believed, when I in the 90s growing up, the worst thing you could possibly be was a bigot, I would just never, it would be my worst nightmare to be thought of as that by my peers or whatever, and but now it turns out that our government is complicit with the Israeli government in a horrific genocide every bit as horrific as the Holocaust. We are talking about some Old Testament level genocide here, like some Amalekites sort of thing. It's just an absolute abomination, and everyone can see it because of TikTok and other social media platforms. And obviously, the Epstein thing you mentioned figures into this somehow because, Ghislaine Maxwell's old man in the Mossad, right? And rumors about Epstein himself being a Mossad asset or agent are swirling. Right? There's clearly some kind of a structure of power that exists outside of the nation states that we thought we lived in. And so I'm really excited about this Epstein business in the sense that it is like a poison pill. It's going to cause us we can't digest that pill as a society. That we are now we are now propping up genociders like the ones that we thought we invaded and conquered back in the 1940s, World War II.
How long has Epstein been dead now?
He died in the summer of 2019.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been 6 years, and it's still the issue marches on.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Great. It's so great to see that no matter what scandal the Democrats threw at him to try to unseat him, right? I mean, they can't do criticism of foreign wars, and they can't do criticism of top-down trickle-down economics, and they can't do criticism of bank bailouts, but they can criticize the Donald for being uncouth or whatever. And, it's just amazing that all of the scandals they tried to land on the Donald's doorstep, the only one that sticks is the Epstein files, and that's unfortunate for Democrats because they're all implicated up in those files too, and so it just becomes this weird thing.
Well, it's some divine justice, or it's just an issue of our reptilian, overlord's creation. That's just inescapably the karmic retribution is inescapable.
Yeah.
And so we've got that going on.
Well, I am just loving it. I can't believe that the three most villainous representatives on Capitol Hill are on the right side of the Epstein question. It really adds some spice to the old stew, eh, Brian?
It sure does.
All right, well, What say we take a little break? And when we come back, we're going to talk about pyramids, Egypt, Stargate, and all kinds of exciting things because of that recent JRE appearance.
All right, cool.
And we're back. All right. Well, I'm given to understand, Brian, that you have some. You want to talk about remote viewing here for a few minutes.
Yeah, well, we were talking about remote viewing on the last podcast, and there's some kind of remote viewing university or something.
Yeah. What was the name of that place? It was named after. Oh man, I should have that name on the tip of my tongue.
But it's supposed to like hone your remote viewing skills. Well, the name almost doesn't matter. But, I was listening to...
the Monroe Institute. I just pulled it up.
There you go. Well, I was listening to Shane Gillis's podcast, and he has and his pal Matt McCusker there. And they were talking about this remote viewing app, RV Tournament, which is...
This is different than the Monroe Institute's app, correct?
Yeah, but it is supposed to hone your remote viewing skills. And so... Well, here's how the app works, okay?
Okay.
So you're supposed to, it gives you like you're going to like draw an image of what it is that you're trying to remotely view, right?
Okay.
So you sit there and think about like what you're going to be seeing in the future. And then what happens is it shows you two images at like 4:30 each day. And then so based on the image that you've drawn, you're supposed to predict which of the two images is the actual one. And then there's a slider with a degree of confidence. And so, like, maybe like, all right, well, it's going to be like a walrus is going to be the thing. And then there'll be two images. And then maybe, so one is like a building and the other is some other kind of sea creature. Maybe like, like a sea lion. And you're like, all right, it's probably the sea lion. And then, if it is a sea lion, your remote viewing skills aren't garbage.
Okay. This is exactly what Hal Puthoff... This is exactly the method Hal Puthoff described when talking about how his organization was able to make money in the commodity markets, right? They would, every day at like 4:30, like you're saying, they would have two disparate images, and if the commodity was up, they would look at one image, and if the commodity was down, they would look at the next, and then at other times of the day, they would try to cast their mind into the future and try to figure out which image they would be viewing the next day, and then according to him, they were able to make a bunch of money in commodity markets doing this, but I'm like, why would you stop? If you had this money-making scheme, like what would make you say, all right, well, I got enough money now, go to the next thing? But that sounds very familiar, and this is how the app works.
Yeah, so I tried it, and all right, so this, the image on which you draw, it's crude trying to draw something with your finger on the phone there,
okay.
but that is supposed to be a kitty cat.
So you have drawn this.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and it's not a bad likeness of a cat. It's got all four legs, a tail. It's recognizably feline. It doesn't have the long snout of a dog, so it looks feline.
And then, these were the two images that came up.
Okay, so you closed your eyes hours before you saw this image, right?
Yeah.
You closed your eyes and you drew a cat, and then it came up with this cat image.
Yeah, I think I did the thing around 10 o'clock, and then so around 4:30 in the afternoon.
Okay.
The two images came up.
Well, the two images that you have here, there's one of a downtown urban cityscape with high-rise buildings and a large advertisement, like a cosmetic advertisement, of a young woman on a long narrow ribbon board, and then another picture is of two ceramic cat sculptures sitting on a stone wall or something. So that's pretty close. So
right. Well, and so when I saw the two ceramic cats, I was like, well, that's obviously what it is. And so you slide down with like a really high degree of confidence. And then so you get like maximal points. The more you slide your confidence meter, like the risk reward is like you get 8 points if you slide it all the way down. But if you got it wrong, you'd be down 8 points, and the goal is to like accumulate points, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. So that I did it twice.
And was the second time as dramatic?
Well, no, but I'll just tell you. Like, so this is what I drew the second time, right?
Obviously, a lighthouse,
right? And so what I was picturing in my head was either like a lighthouse or an owl. And if you think about like that like if you see like if you're looking to the eyes of an owl and it's like like it's kind of the same kind of thing. There's like a central light and there's like a in the middle like I don't know. It's like very focused in the middle, right?
Well, my mind went to like a structure with a body and then a head that rotates 360 degrees. That's a lighthouse and an owl.
I guess there's that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I was just thinking about like a strong something in the center, and then I don't know the outside, and then like so the images that came up. I don't know. You'll have to decide how questionable this is, but these were the two choices, and so neither of these are especially close to a lighthouse, and so ultimately,
yeah. So I'm seeing here. I'm not even sure what this is. This is a round brass measuring instrument. It looks like it measures degrees of arc. You can see that the degrees of arc are measured along the rim of this brass wheel. And then the other picture is just a jackrabbit sitting in a field munching on a clover.
Yeah. So I don't know. I went with the crazy compass thing because it was like mechanical, but then I realized afterwards. See, the thing is, the jackrabbit, like the eye is like a focal point in the middle, and so I would say that's what it was. It's this like eye in the center, in the like so like the face of an owl or maybe a lighthouse is maybe like that. But anyway, so that's what it's like doing this crazy VR thing.
The second one, pretty thin. You really have to reach to get the connection there. But that first one was shocking that you saw that you drew a cat and then it actually was a cat when 4:30 came around. So I don't know. Well, Brian, can you continue this can you do this as homework and let us know what it's like maybe on the next podcast? I mean,
sure.
I wonder I knew I was not going to have time this week to dig into the Monroe Institute app. I knew I'd be headed down to New Jersey. But that's really interesting. Like, I wonder if it would really be convincing if you did this over the course of weeks. I wonder. That's very interesting. Obviously, there's declassified documents from CIA about how they use remote viewing and seem to use it with actual success. It's something that the CIA concerned itself with in a very serious fashion, but we don't really have an update from CIA since 1975 because that's the last time we got a peek into their files with the Church Committee hearings following Watergate, and so we got no idea what what our venerable intel services have been up to since 75.
Yeah, I don't really know like what the point is, I guess, or like you have like these vague impressions of the future that maybe come to be true, where if someone prompts you, you could maybe say if that was it or not. I don't know what the aim is, but anyway, I guess I'll keep trying doing it for another week and report back.
Well, if you truly do have some kind of line of sight into the future, no matter how foggy, if you really could reliably demonstrate it, it would prove that the future is hidden by geometry, right? Like our conception of time is an illusion, in other words. Something I've banged on about many times on this very podcast, but it's like we got the X, Y, and Z axes. They're all at 90-degree angles to each other. There's nowhere else to shoehorn in another 90-degree angle, so we just animate the whole thing like a flip book, and that's the way our brain detects a fourth dimension, the way that it interprets a fourth dimension. So it would prove that's true. It would prove that the future and the past are hidden from us just because of our disadvantageous vantage point. That's a confusing sentence, but you see what I'm saying.
Well, it seems pretty obvious that is true. Yeah. So I guess that would explain like maybe why it works to the extent that it does.
Yeah, boy. I'll tell you, I was just having an experience with one of my buddies down in New Jersey. And he was explaining to me, like the man, we were talking about New Jersey UFOs. Like, I wanted to get everyone's recollections from last year because I was very interested in the UFOs. And he was saying that he saw some, but they were obviously drones. I mean, they were large drones, shockingly large, but clearly drones, according to him. But he also said that he has had the experience on several occasions of dreaming things and then having that dream come true the next day and being freaked out over it. It's like, what? So that does suggest that there's something there's something going on here. Our what do you call it? Rational. What is the word for empirical? Our empirical model of reality. Our bottom up empiricism comes to us from Aristotle, of course. Our bottom up construct isn't really capturing everything that's going on there. To my mind, it's like maybe there's a little room for Aristotle's master and rival, Plato, the idea of a top-down reality instead of a bottom-up one. It seems like there's some kind of... It's like we don't quite have the right model to predict that remote viewing should work. So that's wicked interesting.
Well, one thing that I heard Kurt Metzger talking about is that like the government, they want you to be like raised like in a single family like home, like where you're like, they want to shut off, like there's like a new agey part of your brain and then there's like a materialist side of your brain. And so they want you to be like all in on the materialist side or all in on the new agey side, and where it's like a balance of the two. And that relates to like you don't want like just a male run household or just a female household. You want both, right?
Balance, important in all things.
Yes.
Yeah, Kurt Metzger, of course, is he's Jimmy Dore's like. And on the Tonight shows, on the late night comedy shows, there's always like a guy off to the side who makes the comment. And this is supposed to be Kurt Metzger's role, and he's always going around on the podcast. The guy's interesting. He's Alex Jones-esque. A lot of word salad, a lot of ADD. But man has done some interesting research, and so he's got very interesting. He makes for an entertaining listen, I guess I will say, for Mr. Metzger. Yeah. Well, I suppose speaking of personalities and podcasts, one podcast that really caught my eye this past week was Ben Van Kerkwyk on JRE number 237. Ben is obviously he's an Aussie. He's got a hilarious Australian accent, but he started talking about this Labyrinth of Egypt that I had never heard of before. Now, I consider myself fairly well acquainted with Greek and Roman history, and also medieval history. But when it comes to the Egyptians, I really don't know nearly as much as I do about Greek and Roman society. So when he started talking about this labyrinth, this Egyptian labyrinth, I was shocked that he was saying that many classical writers and historians have talked about this labyrinth, and I generated a short list here. These are all people that I like to read excerpts of their history. I always like to reference their text when I can. It's important to have the contemporary historian's view on things, but listen to this. I had no idea this existed. Herodotus, of course, one of the most famous of ancient historians, the guy that always, he has a very cinematic way of, his way of describing history is so cinematic that historians kind of like, maybe he's exaggerating. But look, check this out. Back in the 5th century BC, Herodotus provided a detailed account of this labyrinth, claiming that it surpassed even the pyramids. He wrote that it had 12 covered courts and 3,000 chambers, with 1,500 chambers above ground and 1,500 chambers below ground. He reported that Egyptian caretakers refused to show him the underground chambers, claiming they contained the tombs of early builders and sacred crocodiles. Strabo, 1st century BC, Roman historian. The geographer, Strabo, the geographer, also claimed to have visited the site and described it as a work equal to the pyramids. He noted that the roof of each hall was made of a single mass of stone, and that a guide was necessary to navigate the winding passageways. Next, Diodorus Siculus, 1st century BC, contemporary to Strabo. This historian reported that the labyrinth's design was so ingenious that it was impossible to exit without a guide. He was among those who made the likely incorrect linkage to the Cretan labyrinth of the Minotaur under the palace of Knossos, just south of Heraklion on Crete. Great place to visit if you haven't. And then, of course, there's a whole history of Egyptologists finding evidence of these remains. But the man who was on the JR, obviously, 3-4 months ago, one of these guys with one of these tomography sensors had come out and held a press conference and announced they found massive megalithic structures beneath the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, the 3 great pyramids. We all remember this.
Yeah,
and then
Flint Dibble is casting shade on this hypothesis.
Yeah, so too were the rank and file Egyptologists within Egypt specifically. But I mean, similar technology here when used, like ground penetrating radar, seems to. So they found the foundation of what was assumed to be this labyrinth, which was equal to or greater than the pyramids in scale and grandeur. But this man is saying that seems to now be wrong, and that underneath what was assumed to be the foundation back in the 1800s. Actually, there's a huge structure beneath there. He described a massive metallic tic-tac-shaped object picked up by this ground-penetrating radar. Just to close the loop here, This structure is not it's not located on the Giza Plateau. It's located in, what is the name of it? On Hawara, and it's about 60 miles south on the Nile River from Cairo. And there was a couple other, so there's like a step pyramid nearby, but this is 60 miles south of where the Great Pyramids of Giza stand. So this is a separate site, Hawara, just to make that point. Second point that this man Ben Van Kerwick was on about on the JRE. So another 50 miles south or so on the Nile River, there's another site, Dendara. And here in Dendara, there's I'll just read the description. It's the Dendara Zodiac is a famous bas relief from the ceiling of the pronaos or portico of the temple of Hathor at Dendara, Egypt. It contained a planisphere or map of the stars on a celestial sphere depicting the zodiacal constellation and hieroglyphs that some interpret as indicating a stargate. Ben was saying that the literal translation of the hieroglyphics is Stargate, and it would have pictures. So it would have a picture of like the star in question. Like different hieroglyphics had different would indicate that this is supposed to be a Stargate to a different star. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean a physical Stargate. It could have some metaphorical meaning or something like that. But it's very strange to find all this at the Temple of Hathor at Dendara. Right, very strange. Last piece is the schized vases. Now, this man made a big deal about these vases. There are tens of thousands of them. Vases that are of such delicate and precise construction that we can't replicate it in modern times. And the thing that really freaks out Ben about all these vases, people buy them as part of collections. He says he knows people that have hundreds of them. They're not uncommon or rare, relative to Egyptian artifacts. They're not that uncommon or rare among Egyptian artifacts. The thing that's freakish about these vases and their very thin, very fine, very symmetrical construction is that they're found in pre-dynastic excavation sites, meaning that they predate dynastic Egypt. According to Ben Van Kerwick, the pattern here seems to be of as dynastic Egypt wears on, their technology gets worse and worse over time. We tend to think of our own society as getting more technologically advanced as the years march on, but it seems that as the dynasties unwound in the old, middle, and new kingdoms, the technology got worse and worse and worse over time. It's very the pre-dynastic period. They're just supposed to be working with stone tools, right? They're not supposed to be able to achieve these feats of craftsmanship displayed on all these vases. I'll just read the description here. The schist vases date back to the pre-dynastic period and are remarkable for their exquisite craftsmanship, especially given the tools available at the time. They are carved from very hard stones like schist, diorite, anorthosite, gneiss, and porphyry. I have no idea what any of those are except for porphyry, that red stone that oftentimes you'll see ancient structures, ancient statues carved out of, but it's very hard. The precision, thinness of the walls, and intricate shapes seem like they should have been impossible for ancient Egyptian artisans to achieve. So that is very, very interesting. Like, what? It does seem like there's, the old saying that science progresses one funeral at a time. It does seem like there's a bunch of, it seems like there's a status quo and an old guard of Egyptologists who don't want to consider these wild and potentially embarrassing things like talking seriously about stargates or about ancient advanced civilizations that are lost to history. But the contention of Ben Van Kerwick is very Hancockian in the sense that he suspects that there's an oscillation between civilization and cataclysm, and that we, bounce back and forth between those two poles as thousands of years pass, as the millennia pass. And it is interesting that we keep pushing back the date in which humans completed their evolution, quote unquote completed, the date at which Homo sapiens sapiens became. We keep finding older and older Homo sapiens skeletons around the world. The latest ones in Somalia, Ethiopia, Morocco. That's what it was, Morocco. And it's pushing back. It used to be that we thought humans had finished their evolution between 100 and 150,000 years ago, and it now seems like it might be closer to 200,000, and maybe even beyond. So, I don't know. It was quite a rollicking JRE, and those are the ones that really capture my imagination when you start thinking about things like like the possible influence of ancient aliens on Egyptian culture, something that's long been part of the zeitgeist, at least since that rollicking Kurt Russell movie Stargate back in 1994 or 3, whatever that was.
Well, the like establishment sure doesn't want to accept the idea that these pyramids might be something else other than just like a burial ground. I think it would be easier not to be skeptical of like the establishment position if it wasn't for these crazy UFOs in the sky. Because I mean, if the UFOs are real and they like can transcend, Einsteinian physics and have the ability to travel through time, which seems pretty plausible if you've transcended Einsteinian physics. Not being a physicist, I'll just announce that. But I don't know, man. If you can transcend, if you can become a master of gravity, it seems like a lot would be possible. Man, it just seems really easy to imagine. Man, I don't know. There's going to be the problem. Kurt Metzger also has this theory that it's like these trillionaires. I think it was like Putin or someone was caught in the hot mic talking about like organ harvesting, and they're going to have to like these crazy rich people are going to be like trying to like live forever. And like Peter Thiel, he's doing like a 4-part talk on the Antichrist. They were lampooning this on on Joe Rogan with Tim Dillon there.
A 4-part lecture series with noted tech entrepreneur Peter Thiel about the Antichrist? What is going on?
Yeah, I mean that's really crazy. And it's funny that in the maze you've got like these like magical crocodiles, right? Yeah. And this is where the idea of these lizard people come from, right? And so Kurt Metzger also makes this hilarious point about the thing about reptiles, right? Is they do reproduce asexually, right?
Is that true? I did not know about that.
Komodo dragons do this, and like snakes in captivity, and so the whole mythos of the Christian religion is like the virgin birth, right?
Parthenogenesis.
That's the word. Yeah. And so that is something that like lizards just can do.
That's interesting.
And so that is all very fascinating to me.
I always thought the parthenogenesis thing came around because of questionable translations of the Greek word kore, or girl, because I always like the feminine trinity of the crone, the mother, and the girl/virgin, right? Obviously the church wants to get rid of the crone because the crone knows about the magical plants in the woods that allow you to achieve transcendence. And the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, was in the business of establishing a monopoly over access to God, and they didn't love competition to their Christian Eucharist of wheat and bread and wine, and so they had to ban the goddess worship. And but they also carried forward many of the elements of goddess worship because that's people, right? It's like, why is Christmas on December the 25th? Well, it's not because Jesus was literally born on that day, but because that was a big pagan celebration day, and to make Christianity palatable to pagans, you kind of match, you let them still celebrate the feast on the old day. And so the 2/3 of the feminine trinity make it into Christianity, but it's confusing because you've got the mother and the girl or the virgin in the same person. Like in a mother and a virgin is incompatible. You can't really. There are notorious preconditions to be undergone before you can get pregnant, and obviously being a virgin is incompatible with that. But that is very interesting. The idea, I didn't know about that reptiles can reproduce without.
Yeah, that's
really. I have to look that up. I did not know that to be true.
I verified it on ChatGPT for what it's worth, but it's pretty. It's definitely a thing.
Very interesting. Well, like the Catholic Church.
They also talk about Jurassic Park, the original one. Right? That's what ends up happening.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's a good point. I was just going to say that the Roman Catholic Church, as the Middle Ages wore on, they had this curated version of reality. They wanted their sheaves to live within that curated reality. There's only one way to access God, and that is through the sacrament of the Roman Catholic Church. And of course, eventually they began abusing the perception of the public by having the sale of indulgences, where you got to pay a fin to curtail your sentence in purgatory. In other words, you could just pay the church for sin remission. And obviously that became one of the big ways that people realized that the church was putting them on or misleading them. But it seems like, again, today, our economic elite have created this reality they want us to live in a reality in which, we go to work and they get a big cut of our labor and they're super rich and we're all, we're just their subjects, and they'd like to keep that moving forward into the future. But meanwhile, they've got this like container that they have us living in. But meanwhile, each year that passes, the world outside the container changes, and the situation is fluid and changing. And each year, the railroad tracks diverge. There's the track that they have us living in, and then there's like reality, new scientific discoveries, things like that, new technology, things like this, discovering 0-point energy, or the ability to pinch to zoom time and space, things like that. But they still have us living in the same tired reality, and the greater the difference between what's actually going on and what they're telling us. I mean, that the differences are mounting. People are starting to notice it's a threat to their power, right? It's like, so now we're at a state where we've got UFOs flying over New Jersey, and state officials some state officials upset about it, other state officials pretending it's not happening. We've got, as Tim Dillon mentioned on the we've got Bibi Netanyahu hitting up the old Nelk Boys podcast to discuss the BK Lounge, Burger King. It's like reality is just getting stranger and stranger and stranger. And people are starting to take notice on podcasts like this. We're looking at each other going, yeah, things seem a little off to you. I mean, it seems like with each passing year, how tenable the reality projected by those in power, right? That projection is becoming less tenable with each passing year. And one by one, we're all waking up and going, you know what? Maybe the authorities are full of shit. Maybe the emperor is actually naked. Let's have a look at our emperor and see how clothed this person really is. And wow, what do you know? The emperor couldn't be more naked if they tried. Naked as the day they were born. So, yeah, I mean, that really seems like all this business with all these bizarre findings in Egypt fall into that category. If we discover major mega structures beneath the pyramids that prove that we are living, tens of thousands of years after civilizations more advanced than our own, well, that will just rewrite everything. And it will also not be good news for those in power, right? It'll turn out that, everyone's going to find out that the con has been in, that Lucy moving the football is just a part of that. And it just seems like we're hurtling towards this inflection point where no one's going to believe or listen to the authorities anymore because they're just so corrupt. Oof.
All right.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Brian? Is that a good place to leave the old System Failure podcast for this week?
I think you tied it up nicely.
All right. Well, usually at this moment in the podcast, I invite you all to join us over at systemfailure.org. There you can sign up to receive the weekly emails written by yours truly, and you can receive them in your email inbox, and that way you'll never have to worry about missing one. Furthermore, if you'd like to get in contact with either Brian and myself, and let us know what you think of these ravings on bizarre anomalies in Egyptology, well, you can accomplish that on the About page. Just click on the appropriate name, and we'll see you online. Have a great week, folks.
See you.